The sky above Whisperwind Valley was a tapestry woven from the deepest indigo and the softest violet, a canvas upon which the stars began to pin themselves, one by one, like freshly polished diamonds. Below, the valley itself was a cradle of soft, rolling hills, their peaks dusted with ancient, whispering pines that murmured secrets to the wind. Little cottages, their windows glowing with the warm, buttery light of hearth fires, nestled together like sleeping lambs, their roofs thatched with straw that caught the last kiss of the fading sun. This was a place where magic wasn't a whispered legend, but a living, breathing part of the air, as natural as the dew that sparkled on the morning grass. Elara knew this magic intimately. She was a child of 9 summers, with hair the color of autumn leaves and eyes the shade of the deepest forest moss. Most children in Whisperwind Valley loved the bright, bustling hours of daylight, filled with games of hide-and-seek among the moon-petal bushes and splashing in the clear, pebble-bottom stream. But Elara's heart truly sang when the sun dipped below the western ridges and the first shy stars peeked through the darkening sky. For Elara, the night was not merely the absence of light, but a grand unveiling, a revelation of wonders hidden from the sun's too bright gaze. And tonight promised to be the grandest unveiling of all. Tonight was a Stardust night. From her small window, Elara watched as the familiar constellations brightened, each one a beloved friend. There was the hunter with his shimmering belt, and the weaver with her delicate loom, and the great bear lumbering across the celestial plains. But tonight, a new kind of glow began to seep into the darkness, a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer that seemed to a man emanate not from the stars themselves, but from the very fabric of the night. It was the precursor, the gentle overture to the spectacle to come. Her grandmother, Nana Maeve, hummed a tuneless melody from the kitchen below, the scent of cinnamon and warm milk drifting up, her comforting anchor in the rising tide of anticipation. "Are you ready, little stargazer?" Nana Maeve called up, her voice a warm, crinkling sound, like dry leaves dancing in a gentle breeze. Elara practically flew down the crooked wooden stairs, her bare feet silent on the worn treads. Nana Maeve stood by the hearth, her silver hair braided with tiny luminous beads that glowed softly in the firelight. Her face was a map of gentle wrinkles, each one a testament to a lifetime of stories and wisdom. She held out a steaming mug. "Warm milk to keep the night chill away, and a story if you'd like, while we wait." Elara took the mug, her small hands warming around its ceramic. "Tell me about the first Stardust night again, Nana, please." Nana Maeve settled into her favorite rocking chair, the one carved from ancient oak and cushioned with embroidered cushions. "Ah, the first Stardust night," she began, her eyes distant, as if seeing through the cottage walls and into the swirling cosmos itself. "Long, long ago, before the valley was even called Whisperwind, the sky was much like it is now, full of bright, distant lights. But the world below felt incomplete. The earth was rich, the rivers flowed, but there was a longing, a quiet ache for something more. The people felt it in their hearts, a yearning for dreams that hadn't quite taken shape, for wishes that hadn't found their way to the stars." She paused, her gaze resting on Elara's rapt face. Then, one night, when the stars shone with an almost unbearable brilliance, a great sigh rippled through the heavens. It was the sigh of the cosmos itself, shedding its oldest, most precious memories, its forgotten dreams, its quietest wishes. And they didn't just fall like stones, child. They descended like shimmering snow, each flake a tiny glowing fragment of pure starlight, imbued with the very essence of what had been. "And that's why we collect it," Elara finished, her voice a hushed whisper, "to help our own wishes and dreams find their way." "Precisely," Nana Maeve smiled, a tender light in her eyes. "Each piece of stardust holds a whisper, a fragment of cosmic truth. When we gather it and hold it close, we invite those whispers into our own hearts, nurturing the seeds of our own hopes." A sudden chorus of bells, tiny and melodious, began to chime from outside. Not the heavy clang of the village bell, but a lighter, ethereal sound, as if the wind itself were playing a crystal harp. It was the signal. The Stardust was beginning its descent. Elara and Nana Maeve stepped out onto their porch, joining the other villagers who were also emerging from their homes, their faces turned skyward, a mixture of reverence and awe in their expressions. The air had grown cooler, carrying with it a faint, sweet scent, like honeyed dew and distant thunder. And then it began. From the deepest reaches of the velvet sky, tiny pinpricks of light detached themselves from the starfield. They weren't falling quickly like meteors, but drifting, swirling, descending in slow, elegant spirals, like millions of fireflies dancing a celestial ballet. Each fragment was no larger than a dewdrop, but together they created a shimmering cascade, a waterfall of pure light that seemed to slow time itself. Some were a brilliant, icy silver, others a warm, golden hue, and a rare few, pulsed with a soft, ethereal blue, like captured moonlight. They sparkled, twinkled, and danced, filling the air with a soft, resonant hum that vibrated deep within Elara's chest. Children giggled with delight, holding out their hands, their faces upturned to catch the falling treasures. Adults, usually burdened by the day's labors, stood with open mouths, their eyes reflecting the myriad lights, their worries momentarily forgotten. This was the magic of Whisperwind Valley, a moment of shared wonder that bound them all together. Elara, however, had a specific task. She carried a small, intricately woven basket, lined with the softest moonpetal silk. With careful, deliberate movements, she began to gather the stardust. Most villagers simply let it land on their clothing or in open bowls, admiring its beauty. But Elara had been taught the ancient way. Each piece, Nana Maeve had explained, had its own story, its own energy. To gather it mindfully was to honor it. She watched as a particularly bright cluster of golden stardust drifted towards a patch of blooming night jasmine. Gently, she cupped her hands, letting the tiny warm flakes settle into her palms before carefully transferring them to her basket. She moved through the garden, a silent, dedicated collector, her breath coming in soft, even sighs. The stardust felt like nothing else, lighter than air, yet somehow substantial, cool to the touch, yet radiating a gentle warmth, and each piece pulsed with a faint, almost inaudible hum. She could almost feel the whispers Nana Maeve had spoken of, tiny echoes of ancient dreams brushing against her skin. As the shower began to thin, and the grand cascade slowed to a gentle sprinkle, Elara found herself near the ancient weeping willow at the edge of their property. Its long trailing branches, usually heavy with leaves, now sparkled with thousands of captured stardust fragments, making it look like a tree spun from pure light. A single distinct piece of stardust, larger and more vibrant than any she had collected so far, seemed to be caught in a delicate spider's web woven between two of the willow's lowest branches. It wasn't just its size or its brilliance that drew her. This piece pulsed with a color she hadn't seen before, a deep, luminous amethyst, shot through with veins of silver. And it didn't just glow, it shimmered with an inner light that seemed to ripple and shift, like water reflecting the moon. As she reached for it, a faint, almost imperceptible melody, like the distant chime of a forgotten bell, resonated in the air, a sound only she seemed to hear. Carefully Elara freed the amethyst stardust from its silken trap. The moment it rested in her palm, a warmth spread through her hand, up her arm, and settled in her chest, a feeling both comforting and exhilarating. Unlike the other pieces which simply pulsed with a gentle, steady light, this fragment of stardust flickered, and for a fleeting instant, a tiny image bloomed within its depths. It was so quick she almost missed it, a swirling vortex of deep blues and purples, like a miniature galaxy, and then, just as quickly, it was gone, leaving only the steady amethyst glow. Elara gasped, her heart giving a little leap. She looked around, but no one else seemed to have noticed. Nana Maeve was chatting with Old Master Kale, admiring his overflowing basket of silver stardust. The other children were still laughing, chasing the last few drifting flakes. This was something different. Something just for her. She clutched the unique piece tightly, her thumb rubbing gently over its smooth, cool surface. It hummed against her skin, a deeper, more resonant vibration than the others. She looked at her basket, filled with the ordinary beautiful silver and gold and blue stardust, and then back at the amethyst fragment in her hand. It felt weighty, not in mass, but in significance. The fleeting image of the swirling galaxy, so vivid, so impossible, replayed in her mind. What had it been? A trick of the light? A product of her imagination, fueled by Nana Maeve's stories? Or something more? A shiver, not of cold, but of profound wonder, ran down her spine. The amethyst stardust felt alive, a tiny glowing heart beating softly in her palm. It felt like a key, though she didn't know what lock it might open. The whispers she usually felt from the stardust were vague, comforting murmurs. But from this piece, she felt a distinct pull, a silent invitation to look closer, to delve deeper. The Stardust night was ending, the last fragments of light fading into the pines, but for Elara, a new kind of night had just begun. She knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that this single, extraordinary piece of stardust held a secret, and it was beckoning her to uncover it. She knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that this single, extraordinary piece of stardust held a secret, and it was beckoning her to uncover it. Elara's fingers tightened around the shimmering fragment. Unlike the countless other specks that drifted around her, this one pulsed with a soft internal light, a miniature star captured within her palm. It wasn't just reflecting the last vestiges of twilight, it was generating its own gentle luminescence, casting faint, dancing shadows on her skin. The warmth it emanated was not merely comforting, but alive, almost like a tiny sleeping heart. The pull she felt was not forceful, but a persistent, tender tug, a whisper against the very fabric of her soul, urging her to listen, to feel, to see. She held it up, watching as the light within it shifted, from a pale silver to a deep, ethereal sapphire, then to a fleeting, soft rose. It was as if the stardust was cycling through the hues of a forgotten dawn, or perhaps communicating in a language of color only it understood. She brought it closer to her ear, and though she heard no sound, a subtle vibration resonated through her hand, a silent hum that seemed to echo in the quiet chambers of her mind. The pines, usually so stoic, seemed to lean in, their ancient needles whispering in the faintest breeze, as if sharing in her wonder. Pip, her nimble pine marten who had been curled on a low branch, uncurled slowly, his small, bright eyes fixed on the stardust. Barnaby, the sleepy badger, stirred from his burrow, his nose twitching, catching the scent of something new, something ancient, carried on the air. Even the fireflies, usually scattered, began to gather, their tiny lanterns blinking in unison, creating a soft, living halo around Elara as she stood, mesmerized by the edge of the woods. "What are you?" Elara murmured, her voice barely a breath. The stardust pulsed in response, its light deepening to an indigo, then fading back to a shimmering silver. It was a silent conversation, a dialogue of energy and intuition. The pull intensified, not just a vague sense of direction, but a sensation of memory, as if the stardust was holding a forgotten tale, waiting for the right moment to unravel it. She knew she couldn't stay out in the fading twilight forever. With a gentle sigh, Elara carefully tucked the stardust into the small embroidered pouch her grandmother had given her years ago. A pouch woven with moonlight threads, meant to hold treasures of the heart. Even through the fabric, she could feel its warmth, its persistent hum. As she made her way back to the cottage, Pip scampered ahead, occasionally glancing back, his curiosity piqued. Barnaby lumbered beside her, his usually placid demeanor replaced by an alert attentiveness. The fireflies, as if understanding the significance of her find, escorted her, their lights bobbing softly, illuminating the winding path through the darkening woods. The cottage, nestled beneath the boughs of the old oak, glowed with the warm, inviting light of a hearth fire. Grandmother Elara was likely still awake, perhaps mending, or reading from one of her ancient, leather-bound books. Elara felt a flicker of eagerness to share her discovery, then a moment of hesitation. This piece of stardust felt profoundly personal, its secret meant for her eyes, her heart, alone for now. She decided to observe it first, to try and understand its language before speaking of it. Inside, the air was thick with the comforting scent of wood smoke and dried herbs. Grandmother Elara sat by the fire, her spectacles perched on her nose, a tome open on her lap. She looked up as Elara entered, her eyes, the same shade of warm hazel as Elara's own, twinkling with knowing affection. "The Stardust night was bountiful tonight, wasn't it, little star?" Grandmother Elara said, her voice soft and melodious. She didn't press for details, merely observed Elara's quiet intensity. Elara nodded, managing a small smile. "It was, grandmother. Very bountiful." She moved to her own small corner, a nook filled with her own curiosities, pressed flowers, smooth river stones, feathers from rare birds. She carefully retrieved the stardust from her pouch. Under the soft glow of her lantern, the stardust seemed even more vibrant. It now pulsed with a steady rhythmic beat, a slow, gentle thrum. She noticed something she hadn't seen in the twilight, faint, silvery lines like ancient script, seemed to swirl just beneath its surface, appearing and disappearing with each pulse of light. They weren't static symbols, but fluid, shifting patterns, almost like currents in a tiny cosmic ocean. She found her own collection of stardust, held in a crystal vial, and compared them. Her regular stardust gleamed, reflecting light beautifully, but it was inert, a collection of magical dust. This new piece was different. It lived. Driven by an insatiable curiosity, Elara spent hours that night, long after her grandmother had retired, studying the stardust. She consulted her grandmother's lesser-used books, the ones filled with faded diagrams of celestial bodies, ancient runes, and whispered tales of forgotten magic. She pored over descriptions of various magical minerals, of moonstones that wept light and sun crystals that hummed with warmth. But nowhere, not in a single dusty page, did she find a description of a stardust fragment that pulsed with its own light, that radiated such a distinct intelligent pull, or that bore shifting silvery glyphs within its depths. The closest she came was a passage in a very old, unbound collection of myths, written in a language she barely understood, but whose illustrations spoke volumes. It depicted a constellation, not one she knew, with a single unusually bright star at its heart. The accompanying fragmented text seemed to speak of a heart star, a lumen fragment, a seed of the sky, said to fall only when the veil between worlds thinned, carrying within it the echo of a lost song, or the memory of a distant realm. The illustrations showed figures, not unlike Elara herself, holding such a fragment, their faces etched with wonder and determination. Could this be one of those lumen fragments? The thought sent a thrill through her. If so, its secret was far grander than she could have imagined. It wasn't just a key to a lock, it was a key to a by-door, perhaps to a place or knowledge long forgotten. As the first faint streaks of dawn painted the sky outside her window, Elara finally allowed herself to rest, the stardust cradled in her palm, its gentle thrumming a lullaby. She dreamt of shimmering pathways, of ancient trees that wept starlight, and of a melody half-heard that seemed to call her name. The next morning, the stardust was still in her hand, its light softened by the returning sun, but no less potent. The silvery glyphs within it seemed clearer now, more distinct. She held it to the light, turning it slowly. As she did, the glyphs suddenly coalesced, forming a single, unmistakable image. A soaring, stylized bird, its wings outstretched, seemingly made of pure light. And beneath it, a swirling pattern that seemed to represent a hidden spring, or a wellspring of power. The image wasn't static. It glowed, then faded, then reformed, always the same bird, and the same swirling pattern, like a repeated motif in a silent song. This was not a vague pull anymore. This was a direction, a map, a message. The bird seemed to be flying towards the northwest, and the swirling pattern hinted at a place of water, perhaps deep within the whispering woods. Elara's heart quickened. This was it. This was the secret, or at least the beginning of its unraveling. The stardust wanted her to find this place, this hidden spring or wellspring of power. She rose, her eyes alight with a newfound purpose. Pip, who had been dozing on her pillow, woke with a start, chattering inquisitively. Barnaby, still half asleep by the hearth, let out a soft grunt of acknowledgement, his ears twitching. They sensed her shift in energy, her quiet resolve. Grandmother Elara, stirring her morning tea, noticed the change immediately. "You look as though you've just heard a particularly compelling whisper from the old oak little star," she observed, her eyes glinting. Elara smiled, a genuine, joyful smile that reached her eyes. "Perhaps something even older, grandmother." She didn't show her the stardust yet, still feeling its intimate connection to her alone. "I feel a calling to explore a part of the woods I haven't seen in a long time." Grandmother Elara simply nodded, her gaze lingering on Elara's determined face. "The woods have many secrets, child. Some whisper, some sing, and some wait patiently to be found. Listen to the whispers, but always trust your own heart to guide you." She paused, then added, "Take this." She handed Elara a small, intricately carved wooden bird, no larger than her thumb. "It's a charm of safe passage. It won't protect you from every fallen leaf, but it will help you find your way back if you stray too far." Elara took the charm, its smooth wood warm against her skin. It felt familiar, ancient, imbued with her grandmother's quiet magic. She knew her grandmother understood more than she let on, always had. With her grandmother's blessing, however subtly given, Ilara began to prepare. She packed a small satchel, a water skin, a handful of dried berries and nuts, a sturdy knife, and a coil of thin rope. She wore her most comfortable walking boots and her forest green cloak. And always nestled securely in her embroidered pouch was the lumen fragment, its warmth a constant companion. Pip, seeing her preparations, began to bounce with excitement, his tail ablur. Barnaby pushed his broad head against her leg, a clear indication that he intended to accompany her. Ilara laughed. "All right, you two, but you must be quiet and careful. This isn't a foraging trip." They understood. Pip scurried up onto her shoulder, a light, familiar weight. Barnaby lumbered out the door first, his powerful nose to the ground, already leading the way. Following the silent, insistent pull of the Stardust, Ilara headed northwest, deeper into the whispering woods than she usually ventured. The trees here grew taller, their branches intertwining to form a dense canopy that filtered the sunlight into dappled patterns on the forest floor. The air grew cooler, imbued with the scent of damp earth, ancient moss, and something else, a faint, sweet fragrance she couldn't quite place, like flowers blooming in the dead of winter. The Stardust, held carefully in her hand now, pulsed with a brighter, more urgent light. The luminous bird and swirling pattern within it were clearer than ever, guiding her with an undeniable clarity. When she strayed even slightly from the direction indicated by the bird, the light would dim, and the humming vibration would lessen, only to surge back when she corrected her path. It was a living compass, attuned to a secret destination. The path grew less defined, fading into an intricate tapestry of roots and fallen leaves. Ilara relied on her intuition and the Stardust's unwavering guidance. They passed through groves of silver birch, their bark peeling like ancient parchment, then into stands of colossal oaks, their gnarled branches reaching towards the sky like arthritic fingers. The trees here seemed to hold memories, their very presence exuding an ancient wisdom. At one point, they encountered a thicket of thorn bushes, their branches interwoven so tightly that they formed an impenetrable wall. "Dead end," Pip chattered, his whiskers twitching with frustration. Barnaby nudged the thorns cautiously, his expression one of mild annoyance. Ilara paused, holding the Stardust. Its light, though steady, didn't indicate a change in direction. It insisted this was the way. She looked closer. Among the thorns she noticed a faint shimmer, almost imperceptible. She reached out, her fingers brushing against what felt like a thin veil of magic. It wasn't solid, it was an illusion, a magical disguise. "It's not real," she whispered. She held the Stardust up to the shimmering spot. As its light touched the veil, the illusion wavered, then parted, like curtains drawn back by an unseen hand. A narrow winding path, barely visible before, now lay open before them, leading deeper into the woods. "Well done, Ilara," Barnaby grunted, a rare compliment from the usually stoic badger. Pip let out a triumphant squeak, darting through the newly revealed passage. The path led them downwards, into a shallow ravine where a small, clear stream burbled over smooth, moss-covered stones. The water here seemed to glow with a faint internal light, reflecting the filtered sunlight in iridescent hues. Tiny, luminescent fish darted beneath the surface, their scales shimmering like scattered jewels. The Stardust pulsed joyfully in Ilara's hand, its light turning a brilliant emerald green as they approached the stream. The swirling pattern within it intensified, clearly indicating water. This was another confirmation. They followed the stream for what felt like hours, the air growing cooler and more fragrant. The trees began to change again, their leaves a deeper, richer green, their branches adorned with hanging moss that seemed to glow with its own soft light. Strange, bell-shaped flowers, their petals translucent, chimed faintly in the breeze, though no breeze seemed to stir. The Stardust's light grew brighter and brighter, until Ilara had to squint against its brilliance. The image of the luminous bird and the swirling spring were now almost blazing within the fragment. The hum it emitted was no longer just a vibration, but a low, melodious tone, like the deepest note of a chime. They rounded a bend in the stream, and the trees suddenly parted, revealing a hidden glade. It was a place of breathtaking beauty, unlike anything Ilara had ever seen, even in the magical Whispering Woods. In the center of the glade stood a single colossal ancient tree, its trunk wider than the cottage, its branches reaching towards the sky like a cathedral. Its leaves were not green, but a soft, shimmering silver, catching the light and scattering it like a million tiny diamonds. From its roots a spring bubbled forth, creating a perfectly clear pool that reflected the silver leaves and the patches of blue sky above. The water in the pool glowed with the same emerald light as the stream they had followed, and from its depths, tiny motes of golden light drifted upwards, like bubbles of captured sunshine. Around the base of the tree, the ground was covered in a carpet of flowers that Elara had never seen before. Their petals were like spun moonlight, and they pulsed with a soft internal glow, mirroring the stardust in her hand. The air here was alive with a gentle energy, a feeling of profound peace and ancient power. This was it. This was the place the stardust had led her to. The luminous bird within the fragment seemed to settle, its wings unfurling fully, and the swirling pattern of the spring blazed matching the emerald glow of the pool. As Elara stepped into the glade, the stardust in her hand began to vibrate intensely, its light surging. It didn't just glow now, it sang, a silent, powerful song that resonated through her very bones. The golden motes rising from the spring seemed to dance around her, acknowledging her presence. The silver leaves of the ancient tree rustled, not with wind but with a palpable sense of welcome. The stardust, as if reaching its destination, lifted itself from Elara's palm. It floated for a moment in the air, directly in front of her, its light a beacon. Then, with a soft, almost imperceptible whitey thrumming, it drifted towards the ancient tree. It didn't merge with the tree, nor did it disappear. Instead, it positioned itself gently against the trunk, at eye level, nestling into a small, naturally occurring hollow in the bark. As it settled, the silvery glyphs within it flared once more, no longer shifting, but fixed into a clear, concise message. It was a single, ancient symbol, one Elara recognized from her grandmother's oldest books, though she had never understood its meaning. It was the symbol for the heart of the wood, but beneath it, a smaller, more intricate glyph had now appeared, one she had never seen. It pulsed with a faint blue light and seemed to depict a series of interconnected pathways, leading away from the central symbol, like roots spreading out, or veins carrying life. The lumen fragment had not just led her to a place, it had revealed a deeper secret, a hidden layer to the very heart of the whispering woods. It was not just a spring, but a source. And the symbols, now clear, hinted at connections, pathways, and perhaps a purpose that was yet to be revealed. Elara felt a profound sense of awe and a thrilling anticipation. The secret was far from uncovered, it had only just begun to unfold. The air around the spring thrummed with a new, vibrant energy, a silent song that resonated deep within Elara's chest. The lumen fragment, clutched in her hand, pulsed with a soft, warm light, mirroring the glow that now emanated from the ancient symbols etched into the stone basin. They weren't merely carvings. They were alive, shimmering pathways of silver light beneath the crystalline water, converging at the deepest point of the pool, where the true source lay hidden. Elara knelt, her fingers trembling slightly as she dipped them into the water. It wasn't cold, as she might have expected, but perfectly temperate, feeling more like liquid starlight than mere water. As her fingertips grazed the symbols, a gentle current of energy flowed through her, not shocking, but invigorating, like a breath of pure ancient air filling her lungs. The lumen fragment in her palm flared, and for a moment, the world around her seemed to dissolve into pure light. She saw not with her eyes, but with a deeper sense. She saw the roots of the mightiest trees of the whispering woods, delving deep into the earth, their tips glowing faintly with the same silver light that now pulsed through her. She saw the winding paths of underground rivers, mirroring the symbols, carrying this luminous essence to hidden glades and dormant seeds, awakening them. She saw shimmering threads of magic, invisible to the mundane eye, stretching from this very spring, connecting every living thing in the woods, from the smallest moss to the oldest sentinel tree. This was the heart. This was the source of the wood's lifeblood, its magic, its very consciousness. A whisper, soft as the rustling of leaves, brushed against her mind. It wasn't a voice, but an impression, a knowing. "Care found the first key, little one?" "Needs. Kindly." Elara gasped, pulling her hand from the water, her heart pounding not with fear, but with exhilaration. The vision faded, leaving her kneeling by the luminescent spring, the lumen fragment still warm and bright in her grasp. The symbols continued their gentle dance of light, and the air hummed with possibility. From the deepest part of the spring, where the converging symbols met, a form began to coalesce. It was slow, deliberate, as if woven from the very water and light. First, a shimmering, almost translucent shape, then features began to emerge. A tall, slender figure, draped in robes woven from mist and moonlight. Its skin seemed to be made of polished river stones, its eyes like ancient emeralds holding the wisdom of countless seasons. Wisps of moss and tiny dew-kissed blossoms adorned its hair, which flowed like a cascade of moonlight. This was no ordinary being. This was something ancient, elemental, a spirit born of the woods themselves. The figure stepped gracefully from the spring, its feet making no sound on the mossy ground. Its presence filled the hidden grotto with a profound sense of peace and immeasurable age. "Welcome, Elara." Its voice was a melody of wind chimes and trickling water to the heartwood spring. Elara, overwhelmed, could only stare. You know my name?" The spirit smiled, a gentle, knowing expression that seemed to warm the entire grotto. "The heartwood knows all that stirs within its embrace, and you, Elara, have been stirring for quite some time, guided by a fragment of its own light." It gestured to the lumen fragment in her hand, which pulsed in acknowledgement. "That is a shard of the heartwood's own essence, broken long ago, awaiting reunion." "Reunion?" Elara asked, her voice a hushed whisper. "What do you mean?" The whispering woods, once vibrant with the untamed magic of the world, began to dim many ages ago, the spirit explained. Its gaze distant, as if reliving forgotten eons. A great discord echoed through the lands, and the heartwood, in its wisdom, chose to protect its most potent essence by fragmenting it, scattering its shards throughout the world, hoping that one day, a pure heart would find them and begin the sacred task of reunification. "And the symbols?" Elara pointed to the glowing etchings in the spring. "They are the pathways, the veins of the heartwood, showing where its magic flows and where its essence is most keenly felt," the spirit replied. "And they also mark the locations of the other fragments. Each shard, when reunited with its brethren, strengthens the heartwood, bringing back the lost vibrancy to the woods, and indeed, to all of creation." Elara looked at the lumen fragment, then back at the spirit. "So, I'm meant to find the other fragments." The spirit nodded. "You possess the first key, Elara. The lumen fragment chose you, for your spirit is pure, and your heart is open to the whispers of the wild. You are a lumen bearer, one of the chosen. But how will I find them?" Elara asked, a mix of wonder and trepidation filling her. The woods were vast and ancient, full of secrets. "The lumen fragment will guide you," the spirit affirmed. "As it grows stronger with each reunited shard, its light will become a clearer beacon, and the heartwood itself will speak to you through the wind, the water, and the whispers of the ancient trees." The spirit paused, its emerald eyes fixed on Elara. "Your journey will not be without its challenges, little lumen bearer. The paths to the fragments are protected, not by malice, but by the very magic that sustains them. They require understanding, patience, and a deep connection to the natural world." "What kind of challenges?" Elara asked, a flicker of apprehension. "Riddles of the forest, puzzles of light and shadow, echoes of forgotten songs," the spirit explained gently. "And sometimes, the paths are simply hidden, revealed only to those who truly listen to the woods. But fear not, for you are not alone. The creatures of the woods, the ancient trees, even the very stones, will aid a true lumen bearer." The spirit then extended a hand, its touch cool and refreshing. "Look upon the symbols once more, Elara. Let the heartwood show you the way." Elara, entranced, leaned over the spring again, the lumen fragment now glowing steadily in her hand. As she focused, the silver lines within the water began to shift, to coalesce, forming a single, faint symbol that pulsed brighter than the rest. It looked like a swirling vortex, contained within a triangle, pointing towards the northwest. "That is your first destination," the spirit said, its voice a soft echo in the grotto. "The Whispering Falls. A place where the waters sing forgotten lullabies to the stones, and where the air shimmers with ethereal mists. There. Another fragment awaits. Elara looked up, her mind already racing with images of a shimmering waterfall. How far is it? A journey of 2 sunrises and 2 sunsets if your path is true, the spirit answered. And be wary of the labyrinth of lost echoes that guards its approach. It is not a place of danger but of distraction. A place where the past can ensnare the unwary. The labyrinth of lost echoes, Elara repeated, trying to commit the name to memory. Listen to the lumen fragment, Elara, the spirit advised. Its light will guide you through the echoes, for it resonates only with the truth of the heartwood, not with the illusions of memory. With a final serene smile, the spirit of the heartwood spring began to dissolve back into the shimmering waters, its form blurring, its light merging with the spring's gentle glow. Go forth, little lumen bearer. The whispering woods awaits its renewal. And then, it was gone, leaving Elara alone once more in the grotto, but not truly alone. The presence of the heartwood spring, the pulsing lumen fragment, and the weight of her new purpose filled the space around her. She stood, a deep breath filling her lungs, the cool, mossy air invigorating her. The anticipation was thrilling, the responsibility daunting, but a profound sense of rightness settled in her soul. This was what she was meant to do. Stepping out of the hidden grotto, Elara found the sun already beginning its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of soft orange and rose. The woods around her seemed different now. Where before she saw trees, now she saw ancient sentinels, silent watchers in a vast living tapestry. The rustling of leaves wasn't just wind, it was the soft murmur of the heartwood, a constant, gentle conversation. The scent of pine and damp earth was deeper, richer, imbued with an almost palpable magic. She consulted the lumen fragment, holding it out. It pulsed, brighter than before, and a faint, shimmering thread of light, visible only to her, stretched from it, pointing northwest, exactly as the spirit had indicated. With a renewed sense of purpose, Elara began her journey, her steps light on the mossy forest floor. The first day of her journey was spent traveling through familiar parts of the whispering woods, yet everything felt new. She noticed the intricate patterns on the bark of the ancient oak trees, patterns that seemed to faintly mirror the symbols of the heartwood spring. She saw tiny bioluminescent fungi glowing under fallen leaves, casting miniature constellations on the forest floor. Squirrels chattered at her from high branches, their eyes bright and curious, as if they knew of her quest. As dusk deepened, Elara found a comfortable hollow at the base of a massive gnarled tree. She ate the last of her dried fruit and nuts, the gentle hum of the lumen fragment, a comforting presence beside her. The stars began to prickle through the canopy, and the night sounds of the woods, the hoot of an owl, the distant cry of a nocturnal creature, seemed less mysterious and more like the breathing of a colossal, slumbering being. She felt safe, protected by the very woods she was sworn to heal. She drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep, the lumen fragment's soft glow a sentinel against the darkness. She awoke with the first blush of dawn, feeling refreshed and eager. The lumen fragment pulsed, urging her onward. The shimmering thread of light was still there, guiding her through increasingly dense sections of the woods. The trees here grew taller, their branches intertwining to form a perpetual twilight beneath. Strange iridescent ferns unfurled along the path, their fronds catching the sparse light in a rainbow of colors. As the day wore on, the air grew noticeably cooler, and a faint, distant roar began to reach her ears, the sound of falling water. The Whispering Falls. Elara felt a surge of excitement. She was getting closer. However, as she continued, the guiding thread of light from the lumen fragment began to waver, flickering with a subtle instability. The trees around her started to change, their forms becoming less distinct, their outlines blurring. The air grew heavy, thick, with a strange, sweet scent that made her head feel light. She was entering the labyrinth of lost echoes. The path beneath her feet became indistinct, the moss and earth seeming to shift and undulate. The trees no longer looked like living things, but rather like ghostly images, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. And then, the echoes began. Soft whispers, carried on a phantom breeze, brushed past her ears. They weren't distinct words, but fragments of sound, familiar yet elusive. A snatch of a lullaby her mother used to sing, the playful bark of her childhood companion, a forgotten melody from a village festival. Each echo pulled at her memory, tugging at the edges of her mind, threatening to draw her deeper into their illusory embrace. The lumen fragment in her hand flickered wildly, its guiding light struggling against the encroaching illusions. Elara clutched it tighter, remembering the spirit's words. It resonates only with the truth of the heartwood, not with the illusions of memory. She focused on its steady warmth, on its gentle hum, trying to anchor herself in the present. The path vanished entirely. She was surrounded by a shifting landscape of half-formed images, spectral houses, shimmering fields, figures that resembled people she knew, but whose faces were always just out of focus. They beckoned to her, their voices soft and inviting, promising comfort, familiarity, a return to what once was. "Elara, my dear, come home," a voice, so like her mother's, whispered from a shimmering cottage that appeared suddenly to her right. For a moment, her heart ached with longing. It would be so easy to step inside, to forget the arduous journey, the daunting task. But then, the lumen fragment pulsed fiercely, a burst of pure, unwavering light that cut through the illusion. The cottage flickered, its edges wavering, and for a split second, Elara saw the truth beneath, nothing but an ancient, gnarled tree, its trunk covered in phosphorescent fungi, its branches draped in hanging moss. The illusion was woven from light and shadow, and the lumen fragment was its antithesis. "No," Elara whispered, gripping the fragment like a lifeline. "This isn't real." She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, letting the scent of pine and damp earth ground her. When she opened them again, the illusions were still there, but they held less power. She could see their translucent edges, the faint shimmering that betrayed their unreality. The lumen fragment's guiding thread, though still faint, was now visible again, cutting directly through the swirling phantoms. She began to walk, slowly, deliberately, her gaze fixed on the lumen fragment's light. Each step was an act of will, a refusal to be drawn into the alluring traps of the past. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, conjuring images of simpler times, of warmth and security. But Elara pushed through, reminding herself of the spirit's words, of the importance of her quest, of the heartwood's need. The air grew clearer with each step, the illusions weakening, becoming more transparent. The ground beneath her feet solidified, the moss returning to its familiar cushion. The ghostly trees slowly regained their solid forms, their leaves rustling with a real living sound. The strange, sweet scent began to dissipate, replaced by the clean, crisp smell of damp earth and fresh water. Finally, with one last surge of the lumen fragment's light, Elara stepped out of the labyrinth of lost echoes. The change was abrupt and profound. She stood on a clear, well-worn path, leading directly towards the source of the roaring sound. The air was cool and mist-laden, carrying the fresh, clean scent of water. Before her, the whispering falls cascaded down a sheer cliff face, a breathtaking curtain of silver water plunging into a deep, crystalline pool below. The sunlight, filtering through the mist, created a perpetual rainbow arching over the falls, its colors shimmering and shifting. The cliff face itself was not bare stone, but covered in a vibrant tapestry of emerald mosses, glistening ferns, and delicate bell-shaped flowers that seemed to pulse with a soft inner light. The roar of the falls was not harsh, but a powerful rhythmic hum, a song of immense natural energy. And within that hum, Elara could discern a quieter, almost melodic sound, the forgotten lullabies the spirit had mentioned. It was as if the water itself was singing, a chorus of liquid voices echoing through the mist. The lumen fragment now glowed with a steady, brilliant light, and the shimmering thread extended directly towards the very heart of the falls, where the water seemed to part just slightly, revealing a small, hidden grotto behind the cascading curtain. A grotto shrouded in mist, yet emanating a distinct, powerful energy. Elara felt the pull, an undeniable draw towards that hidden space. She knew, with a certainty that resonated deep in her bones, that the next fragment of the heartwood's essence awaited her there. With a final determined breath, she began to walk towards the shimmering veil of the whispering falls, ready to step into its embrace and discover what new magic lay beyond. Elara stepped into the shimmering veil, and the world shifted. The roar of the whispering falls didn't silence, but transformed, becoming a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through her very bones. The air grew thick, not with water, but with a palpable energy, like breathing liquid starlight. Each droplet that touched her skin sparked with a faint, cool current, awakening dormant senses. Beyond the curtain of water, the grotto unfolded like a secret dream. It was a cavern carved, not by erosion, but by magic itself. Its walls pulsed with a soft, cerulean bioluminescence, illuminating intricate patterns that seemed to shift and reform with every beat of Alara's heart. Delicate, crystalline formations, like frozen echoes of the falls, dripped from the ceiling, catching the faint light and scattering it into 1,000 tiny rainbows. The ground beneath her feet was not rock, but a carpet of velvety moss, impossibly soft and glowing with a faint emerald luminescence. In the center of the grotto, where the most powerful energy seemed to converge, stood a colossal, ancient stalagmite. It rose like a natural altar, impossibly smooth and dark, yet radiating warmth. Around its base, a shallow pool of water, perfectly still and clear, reflected the glowing walls above, creating an illusion of infinite depth. But it wasn't just water. Tiny motes of golden light danced within its surface, swirling like a miniature galaxy. Alara felt the pull intensify, a gentle, insistent tug towards the pool. She walked forward, her steps silent on the moss, her eyes fixed on the shimmering water. As she neared, the golden motes within the pool began to coalesce, swirling faster, brighter, until they formed a luminous vortex at the pool's heart. From this vortex, a single perfect lily bloomed, its petals fashioned from pure, flowing light, its stem rooted in the golden energy. And within the lily's glowing heart, nestled among its ethereal stamens, pulsed the second fragment of the heartwood's essence. It was unlike the first. This fragment was a tear-shaped pearl, not made of wood, but of solidified light, shimmering with all the colors of the rainbow. It hummed with a quiet, vibrant energy, radiating a profound sense of peace and clarity. But as Alara reached out, her fingers hovering above the luminous bloom, the grotto seemed to hold its breath. The humming intensified, and the reflections in the pool rippled, not from touch, but from an unseen force. A voice, ancient and soft as falling water, echoed not in her ears but directly in her mind. "To take, you must first understand. The heartwood is not merely power, it is balance. Show me your understanding, child of the surface." Alara hesitated, her hand suspended. "Understanding," she whispered aloud, her voice barely a breath. Suddenly, the crystalline formations around the grotto began to sing. Not with sound, but with light. Each crystal pulsed with a different color, a different rhythm, creating a complex, shifting symphony of light and shadow. The pool's surface began to mirror these patterns, becoming a kaleidoscope of swirling hues. It was a test, she realized, a test of perception and harmony. She closed her eyes and then opened them, not looking at the lights, but through them. She focused on the feeling the grotto evoked: balance, flow, interconnectedness. The first fragment, nestled in her pouch, thrummed in response, reminding her of the forest's deep roots, its silent strength. She remembered the way the waterfall moved, a constant flow, yet each droplet unique. She saw the patterns in the light, not as separate entities, but as parts of a single, flowing tapestry. She began to breathe in time with the grotto's hum, letting the energy flow through her. Then, she extended her hand again, not reaching for the pearl directly, but placing her palm gently on the surface of the water, just beside the lily. She didn't try to grasp, but to connect. She poured her own quiet wonder, her reverence for the natural world, into the pool. She imagined herself as a part of the grotto, a part of the falls, a part of the heartwood's vast interwoven existence. As she did, the light symphony softened. The pool stilled, its surface becoming a mirror of pure, tranquil luminescence. The lily pulsed gently, and then, with a soft, almost imperceptible sigh, released the shimmering pearl. It floated upwards, like a bubble of light, settling gently into Alara's open palm. A wave of warmth, both gentle and profound, washed over her as the second fragment merged its energy with her own. She felt a new clarity, a deeper connection to the flow of all things. It was as if she could suddenly feel the currents of the hidden streams beneath the earth, the silent growth of roots, the gentle pull of the moon on the tides. The map, still tucked into her pouch, began to glow with a faint internal light, its lines shifting, revealing new contours. "Thank you," Alara whispered, a tear of wonder tracing a path down her cheek. The grotto responded with a final, echoing hum, a silent benediction. With both fragments now secured, Alara knew her journey was far from over. The map glowed brighter now, its faint lines resolving into a clearer path that stretched towards a new distinct region, a place marked by intertwined spirals, shimmering with emerald light. Der verdant labyrinthine, the map seemed to whisper, "I'm where the very trees hold ancient secrets." Leaving the grotto, Ilara stepped back through the waterfall, feeling lighter, more vibrant than before. The world outside seemed sharper, more alive. The forest, still veiled in twilight, whispered greetings she could almost understand. Her journey to the verdant labyrinth led her away from the towering peaks and into a land of perpetual mist and colossal, ancient trees. The air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming moss. The path, once clear, dwindled into game trails, then into barely discernible impressions beneath a canopy so dense that only slivers of sunlight pierced through, creating ethereal shafts of light that danced with dust motes. The map, now a constant source of quiet guidance, pulsed gently, leading her deeper and deeper into what felt like a living dream. The trees here were unlike any she had ever seen. Their trunks were wider than houses, their branches reaching skyward like gnarled, moss-covered arms, their leaves a spectrum of greens, from deepest jade to palest lime. Some of them had faces, not carved, but naturally formed in their bark, eyes that seemed to watch her with ancient wisdom. As she delved deeper, the forest began to shift. Pathways she had just traversed would subtly change. A fallen log might appear where there was none. A familiar cluster of ferns would vanish, replaced by a wall of impenetrable ivy. This was the verdant labyrinth, a place where nature itself was the puzzle, a living maze designed to test not just one's direction, but one's perception and patience. Ilara remembered the second fragment's gift, the clarity, the connection to flow. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, and let her other senses guide her. She felt the subtle currents of air, the faint hum of life beneath the earth, the pull of unseen water sources. The forest was not trying to trap her, she realized. It was inviting her to understand its own rhythm. She stopped relying on sight alone and began to listen. She heard the rustle of leaves that seemed to guide her, the drip of water that suggested a hidden spring, the silence that warned of a dead end. She touched the ancient bark of the trees, feeling their pulse, letting their roots whisper directions beneath her feet. The first fragment reminded her of the forest's deep, unwavering strength, the second of its subtle, flowing wisdom. Days blurred into a timeless journey. She encountered creatures of the labyrinth, luminous moss hares that left trails of starlight, gentle tree striders with bark-like skin and eyes like polished amber, and singing beetles whose melodies echoed through the vast green halls. She shared her meager provisions with them, offered kind words, and found that the labyrinth, in turn, seemed to open its paths for her. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the map pulsed with a strong, unwavering light, drawing her towards a clearing bathed in an otherworldly emerald glow. Here, the trees were even grander, their branches intertwining to form a vast living cathedral. In the center of this clearing stood not a tree, but a colossal, spiraling vine, thicker than any Ilara had ever seen, its tendrils reaching into the sky like a twisting ladder to the heavens. And at the very heart of this spiraling vine, cradled within a cup of colossal, glowing leaves, pulsed the third fragment. This fragment was a crystal, not clear, but filled with a swirling emerald mist, like a miniature, living cloud. It hummed with a profound energy of growth and renewal, a vibrant life force that made the very air around it thrum. But as Ilara approached, a guardian emerged from the shadows beneath the vine. It was a creature of pure light and shadow, its form shifting like smoke, yet its eyes burned with an ancient, unwavering intensity. It was the spirit of the labyrinth itself, a being of immense power, guarding the heart of its domain. "You have navigated the labyrinth, child," the guardian's voice resonated, a chorus of rustling leaves and deep earth. "You have shown patience and perception. But the heartwood is life itself, and life requires sacrifice, understanding of true connection. What do you offer, not of your possessions, but of your spirit, to prove your worth to this fragment of vital essence?" Ilara looked at the swirling emerald crystal, then back at the shifting guardian. Sacrifice? Connection? Gadi. She thought of the heartwood, the source of all life, now ailing. She thought of her own journey, of the fragments she carried, of the forest that had nurtured her. She closed her eyes, and a vision bloomed in her mind. The world vibrant and alive, then slowly fading, withering into dust. She saw the pain of the dying trees, the fear of the scattering creatures. And then, she saw herself, a small figure, but resolute, carrying the hope of restoration. "I offer my connection," Ilara said, her voice clear and strong. "My connection to every living thing. To the roots beneath the earth, to the leaves reaching for the sun, to the water that gives life, to the spirit that binds us all. I offer my promise to be a steward, not a master, to heal, not to take, to return the Heartwood's life, even if it means pouring my own life force into its heal." As she spoke, the first 2 fragments in her pouch began to glow, resonating with her words, their combined energies flowing through her, amplifying her intention. The air in the clearing thickened with a palpable sense of shared life. The Guardian's shifting form solidified slightly, its luminous eyes softening. A promise of selflessness, a true understanding of the Heartwood's sacred bond, it whispered. "You are worthy, child of the forest." With a graceful, shimmering movement, the Guardian dissolved back into the shadows of the colossal vine. The glowing leaves cradling the emerald crystal unfurled, gently presenting the 3rd fragment to Ilara. She reached out, and as her fingers closed around the swirling emerald crystal, a surge of pure, unadulterated life force coursed through her. She felt the pulse of every leaf, every bloom, every hidden seed in the labyrinth. She understood the silent language of growth, the intricate dance of life and decay, the profound interconnectedness of all living things. It was as if the forest itself had embraced her, welcoming her as one of its own. Now, all 3 fragments vibrated within her grasp, each distinct, yet harmonizing perfectly. The wooden core, the luminous pearl, the emerald mist, strength, clarity, and life. The map, now burning with a steady golden light, unfurled fully in her mind's eye, revealing its final destination. No longer a whisper but a resounding call. "By the cradle of Ethel. The Heartwood awaits. Inid minman, padinin, kadi, unshits." The journey to the cradle of Ethel was unlike any Ilara had undertaken. The world outside the verdant labyrinth was changing rapidly. The sky, once a brilliant blue, was often tinged with a sickly gray, and patches of the forest she passed through were unnaturally still, their leaves brown and brittle, their once vibrant colors faded to a dusty monochrome. The rivers ran sluggishly, and the air carried a faint, unsettling chill, even in the warmth of the sun. The signs of the Heartwood's decline were undeniable, pressing, urgent. But Ilara was no longer the hesitant girl who had first ventured into the Whispering Falls. The fragments pulsed within her, a constant source of strength and guidance. She felt the ancient wisdom of the forest in her bones, the flowing clarity of water in her spirit, and the vibrant pulse of life in her heart. She walked with purpose, her gaze unwavering, her connection to the world around her deepened and profound. The map guided her through desolate plains where ancient petrified trees stood like silent sentinels, then across mountains whose peaks were now barren and stark. Finally, it led her to a place that chilled her to the core, a vast sunken basin, shrouded in an unnatural twilight, even in the full light of day. This was the cradle of Ethel. The air here was heavy, stagnant, devoid of the usual forest scents. The ground was cracked and dry, resembling ancient, broken pottery. What little vegetation remained was twisted and black, as if consumed by a slow, creeping fire. In the center of the basin, a colossal, gnarled tree stump rose from the earth, wider than any building, its surface scarred and fissured. This was all that remained visible of the Heartwood, a monument to its suffering. A sickly gray mist clung to the stump, writhing faintly, like a conscious entity. It was not a natural fog, but a manifestation of the blight that was slowly draining the Heartwood's life. As Ilara approached, a low, guttural moan seemed to emanate from the very earth, a sound of deep, unending pain. This was no mere guardian or puzzle. This was the Heartwood itself, dying, its essence being consumed by the pervasive shadow. Ilara felt a profound sorrow, but also a fierce determination. She had come too far, learned too much, to falter now. Reaching the base of the colossal stump, Ilara saw the true horror. Deep within its ancient wood, where the core of the Heartwood should have pulsed with light and life, was a gaping, ragged wound. And from this wound seeped the gray mist, thick and suffocating, spreading its tendrils throughout the basin. The map pulsed violently in her hand, directing her to a specific spot on the stump's surface. A smooth, circular depression, almost like a natural altar, where the 3 fragments were meant to be placed. Ilara took a deep breath, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She withdrew the first fragment, the sturdy wooden core, from her pouch. As she held it, she remembered the enduring strength of the forest, its deep roots, its unwavering presence. She placed it gently into the depression. A faint golden light pulsed from the stump, pushing back a small patch of the gray mist. The heartwood moaned again, a sound less of pain, more of a stirring, like an ancient sleeper beginning to wake. Next, she took out the tear-shaped pearl of light. She remembered the clarity of the grotto, the flowing wisdom of water, the interconnectedness of all things. She focused on the harmony, the balance, the quiet strength of life's currents. She placed it beside the first. A wave of clear cerulean light washed over the depression, pushing the mist further back. The moaning softened, replaced by a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through the earth. Finally, she held the emerald mist-filled crystal. She remembered the vibrant life of the verdant labyrinth, the pulse of growth, the promise of renewal. She channeled all her understanding of life's intricate dance, her vow to heal and protect. She placed it carefully next to the other 2. As the 3rd fragment settled into place, a burst of emerald light erupted from the depression, swirling with the gold and cerulean, creating a vortex of pure, living energy. The 3 fragments didn't just sit there. They dissolved, melting into each other, merging into a single pulsating orb of multicolored light. This orb began to sink into the heartwood's ancient wood, slowly, inexorably, drawn towards the gaping wound at its core. As it descended, the gray mist shrieked, a sound of pure agony, and began to recoil, dissolving into nothingness. Ilara watched, mesmerized, as the orb reached the heartwood's core. With a brilliant flash that momentarily blinded her, the wound sealed, mended by pure light. The colossal stump began to glow from within, a soft, warm, golden light that spread upwards, like dawn breaking within the ancient wood. The bark, once scarred and black, began to soften, to unfurl. New, vibrant green leaves sprouted from every fissure, every branch that had once been dead. The stump itself began to grow, slowly, majestically, stretching skyward, its new branches reaching out, spreading life and color throughout the basin. The ground beneath Ilara's feet trembled, not with destruction but with rebirth. Cracks in the earth sealed, and from the once barren soil, tiny shoots of grass and wildflowers burst forth, painting the landscape with a tapestry of emerald and sapphire, ruby and gold. The air, once heavy and stagnant, filled with the sweet scent of fresh earth, blooming flowers, and new, clean rain. Birds, long absent from the cradle, swooped down from the sky, their songs echoing with joy. Tiny, luminous insects danced in the air, and small, furry creatures cautiously emerged from hidden burrows, their eyes wide with wonder. Ilara stood amidst this explosion of life, tears streaming down her face, not of sorrow, but of profound relief and overwhelming joy. The heartwood, the true heartwood, now stood tall and magnificent in the center of the basin, its vast canopy reaching for the heavens, its roots sinking deep into the rejuvenated earth. It pulsed with a gentle, rhythmic light, a beacon of life, its energy flowing outwards, healing the world. She felt a deep exhaustion, as if every ounce of her spirit had been poured into the heartwood's restoration. But with that exhaustion came a peace she had never known, a sense of belonging so profound, it settled deep in her soul. She was no longer just Ilara, the girl from the village. She was Ilara, the keeper of the heartwood's hope, a conduit of its enduring magic. She sat at the base of the newly vibrant heartwood, leaning against its warm, living bark, feeling its steady, strong pulse. The world around her hummed with a renewed vitality. The sky overhead, now a brilliant clear blue, seemed to smile down upon the restored land. Ilara knew her journey was complete. The heartwood was awake, and its magic would flow once more, nurturing the world, bringing balance and life back to every corner of the land. She had faced trials, learned ancient wisdoms, and discovered a strength she never knew she possessed. And in doing so, she had become a part of the heartwood's living story, a whisper in its eternal song. As the first stars began to twinkle in the twilight sky, casting their gentle glow upon the now flourishing cradle of Athel, Elara closed her eyes. A soft, contented sigh escaped her lips. The magic she had carried, the magic she had helped to restore, now resonated throughout the world, a promise of endless wonders and the quiet, enduring power of a single brave heart. And with that peaceful thought, Elara drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep, knowing that the world, once more, was safe, vibrant, and alive with magic.